Welcome to the Mike and Doug Show. Wow, it's been a while, Mike. Usually I can, make jokes about you being down in the mines, but this time, oh no, no. In the interim, it's incredible what you've been doing, but we're not going to tell them that now. We're going to keep that as a secret. But today we're going to talk about J.D. Vance, the 148th person that has been speculated to be Trump's vice presidential running mate. And you have, I believe you have vetted 138 of them and proven that they're, in some cases, not even Americans and other such things. So you've looked at J.D. Vance, and I didn't know anything about him except that when I see him, I think this is a soy boy. This is a true beta guy. This guy is not anything he says he is, and he's a complete fraud. That was my impression. And so I won't even listen to him when he speaks, because I can tell he's doing that trick of let's say crazy, outrageous things to get Trump's attention. Oh,
Well, Douglas, you have some skills that a lot of people don't have of intuition. I had no opinion of him at all. I noticed that he rose through the ranks in Ohio very quickly, and then magically he became a senator. But I never looked into him until about a week ago when the team started working on it.
well,
Didn't
he's
take
down in
long.
your neighborhood.
Oh, just admit. I called you up and said, have the miners look at JD Vance. I see signs everywhere in the propaganda media that that's somebody that they want to prop up for running mate, but we've got a good record. We were early on with Ron DeSantis and that Candy Owens, and then we looked at Carrie Lake and Christy Neumann. They're all, Sarah Huckabee. They're all big fat losers. So why JD Vance? I think it's because he's the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, they're all cut out of the same cloth, and that's the new pattern we're seeing in all these cardboard cutouts. So we've got several phases of these cardboard cutouts in America, and JD's clearly in that group, and I think we're going to talk about that.
I don't know why you would question him and do what I did, which
Oh,
is go straight to Yale Law Journal, because he says he's an editor and look up articles. Oh, that's right. He has none. He wrote nothing for them. So what, you can be an editor? Would he proofread a couple articles?
well, we know why they go to Yale now. That's where they get their brainwashing for the Pilgrim Society. That and
And
Harvard and Columbia and
and
Stanford.
that's right. The good, and basically it's the insider trading group that is basically part of the corporatocracy's lineage. I mean,
Right.
it's you can be pulled in by one of these jokers who is part of the old lineage that goes back to the British connections. But when it comes down to the new people they adopt, here's who
Hmm.
they adopt. They either go to John Hopkins and they get people like Mark Zuckerberg, whose brain has been swiped clean so that they can just tell him what to say because he has no thoughts. Listen to him speak. Listen to J.D. Vance speak. I was trained to assess IQs, and you can assess IQs with somebody's thought patterns, which are basically shown through their speech patterns. The guy's got like maybe 100 IQ.
Is that
There's
right?
nothing there, man. I mean, that guy is such a blank. And then he lies all the time, crying that he's a poor white child who basically was abused all of his life and he lived in the Appalachian Mountains. Those are all untrue.
Yeah, that book that he supposedly wrote, where he's conflating Kentucky, Appalachia with Middletown, Ohio, and that's not far from where I grew up. And the way this writer just spun this yarn and tugged at your hearts, and I know some decent writers who've read that book and they thought it's an okay book. Well, what they did is they hired a good ghostwriter and told a bunch of lies and spun it all together and made Ohio look like this backwater rust bucket location that everybody needed to feel sorry for.
If he was a best-selling author, he'd have other articles. He'd have other books. If his book, Hillbilly Elegy, was so good, and it's not, because I've looked at it, but if it was so good that it was made into a movie by Ron Howard, okay, who
Yeah.
hired Ron Howard to come make a movie out of a stupid book, which wasn't true, based upon a guy who changed his name, Anyone out there
I
can
can
correct
tell you
me.
who exactly it was. It was a trailer trash
5
investor
times.
from southern Middletown, Ohio.
Yeah, he's changed his name 5 times. He is like he wants to criticize the left and act like he's a conservative right winger. But let's remember that in the 2016 election, he was against Trump. He said he was an anti-Trumper, a never Trumper. He criticized Trump tremendously. Then in 20, he supported him, and then in between 20 and now, he didn't support him, and now he does support him. And when you go to his LinkedIn page, what do you find? Nothing but great articles about him praising Trump all the way back to 2014. Lies.
Right.
Every speck of it is a lie. The man is nothing. I cannot believe he's the second person only to ever make it into the Senate without having a political career. And the other one was John Glenn. And I don't think J.D. Vance has traveled around the earth as a cosmonaut yet. So, John Glenn was given that to.
Cosmonauts are Russian, but the Soviets, by the way.
Oh, oops. Sorry, comrade. I guess I've revealed really my true nature here.
Okay, so let me cut to the chase on some of the things that are coming out of this, because yours truly is a part of this story. In that, if you look at when he graduated from Ohio State, which was in 2007, and in 2007, we were getting ready to sue Facebook for patent infringement. And in 2001, I had gone to Battelle Memorial Institute, which is adjacent to the Ohio State campus, and talked with them to suggest that they team with me and IBM to put in our social networking invention at Harvard. And I actually have the slides, and I think I've made them public, but I can pull them out, where we specifically showed how an implementation of our digital leaderboard system would be implemented at Harvard. Now, the bad news is that never happened with me. The good news is it happened with Facebook. So somebody's good news. But anyway, the prime culprit at the Battelle Memorial Institute was a CEO by the name of Jeffrey Wadsworth. And he was a Brit who grew up in a military family in Britain, traveled all over the world, which usually means they're a spy undercover. And he came to the US, and wouldn't you know that he magically came to, after working in various national labs and at Lockheed, he landed a job as CEO of Battelle Memorial Institute. And I haven't met a person around the country who knows what that is. And Battelle Memorial Institute is one of the bigger companies like Serco you've never heard of. And Battelle manages, or partially or fully manages, almost 8 of our national research laboratories in the US. They manage the research laboratory for Department of Homeland Security as well. So they're total military industrial complex. Now we can know the story of Battelle after all this military industrial research that's come out. So Wadsworth went to Battelle. Prior to Battelle, he was the security director for Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories. Lawrence Livermore Laboratories was the organization that Chandler introduced us to prove out our leader social networking technology using the security cameras at Lawrence Livermore Labs as a beta test, which we did in record time. Less than 2 months, we proved that it works. And then Chandler went about developing something called a CRADA, which is a cooperative research and development grant that basically validates your technology, which we wanted to do back then because we wanted to get government contracts. And so we did that. Chandler wrote the document, and in it, he included an escrow agreement where he would be the escrow holder of our source code. Just in case anything were to happen with Leader, he would have a backup copy. Well, as our patent attorney and our corporate attorney, we had no reason to distrust him. That was a mistake on our part. But we did that. We provided the source code. We signed this lengthy a CRADA agreement with Lawrence Livermore Labs. And much later, I went back and I looked at the signatures on that document, and wouldn't you know it, Jeffrey Wadsworth was the signatory on the Lawrence Livermore Labs side for this theft of our source code. So within 11 weeks of that theft by Professor Chandler, our patent attorney, all of that source code was being released by the IBM Eclipse Foundation. So what we see there is Jeffrey Wadsworth was a key part of the theft. And here he is. He goes to Battelle. Didn't send us a thank you note, by the way. And then he teams up with Governor John Kasich. He became the president of the Ohio State University trustees. Now this Brit becomes the president of Ohio State trustees. There's a lot of parts to this story. They attacked the marching band of Ohio State because they were bringing attention to Apple iPads at the time. And the reason that was an issue for them is because Kasich had just given IBM the exclusive contract to redo the supercomputer-centered operating system just off campus. And we now know that the reason for that is they were implementing something called MOOC, M-O-O-C. Now, you're an educator, Douglas. Do you know what MOOC means?
Only because you told me. And
Okay.
I had never heard of Battelle before until you told me.
Okay. MOOC means Massive Open Online Course. Look it up. It's not hidden, and yet nobody's ever talking about it. And what MOOC does is they basically have developed this concept whereby they will digitize professor trainings to be available online. And the ostensible idea is that small and medium-sized universities can get access to that content by award-winning professors, and therefore they won't have to hire their own professor. Now, on paper, okay, maybe that sounds a little good. But what if your strategy overall comes out of the British Pilgrim Society and you want to control the educational narrative across the subject matters in a university so that you get one voice, political voice, for every phase of university education in all subjects? That is what MOOC is about. And they have chosen the Ohio State University Computer Center, which they were just moving off of campus when the marching band director, John Waters, was getting so much publicity from his use of iPads in doing marching band formations. That was I was in the marching band for 4 years. So I'm aware of all this stuff. And so nobody could understand why he was getting attacked by an incoming new president from San Francisco, surprisingly, who was being placed there. His name is Michael Drake. And he is a real loser. He fired John Waters on video before he had ever made an appearance on campus. I mean, nobody could understand what was going on with that. But now we know John was bringing too much Apple attention to Ohio State. And Ohio State and the John Kasich strategy to hire IBM and to implement the MOOC strategy in this new supercomputer center just off Ohio State's campus, when there was no reason at all, according to the insiders that I know, for a move of the computer center from Ohio State off campus. They had plenty of computing power. In fact, I had rented space in that facility myself for some of our early implementations. So they had this whole cockamamie scheme it's clear now what's going on. They're trying to make Central Ohio, around Columbus, around Ohio State, a new data center for this global march toward a one world government and a one world education. And this is specifically focused on education. Why do I say that? Well, since then, we've got Amazon, Facebook, and Google all building super secret data centers in and around Columbus right now. and their construction practices are so secret, they literally have the ditch diggers signing non-disclosure agreements. And I know that because I've talked with, actually, he wasn't a ditch digger, he was a surveyor. And so nobody can know anything about what they're building. In addition to that, Intel has announced and is starting to break ground on a new chip manufacturing facility in a suburb of Columbus. So there's all sorts of John Kasich-esque activities going on in and around Columbus. In addition, this is the home of Lex Wexner, who was a mentor of Jeffrey Epstein. And so we've got Victoria's Secret here, the soft porn company, and we have all of these activities that all focus around, well, what we know now is the move of the British Pilgrim Society using the City of London's deep pockets to finance this new move toward a control of Central Ohio, toward this one world government and one world education.
And they need both senators in their pocket to pull that off.
Exactly. And I wanted to get to there. So in 2007, J.D. Vance, we figured out, it wasn't easy to find what year he graduated from Ohio State, but we did find that. And it was 2007, and that was right when we were getting ready to sue Facebook. So we see now that the president of the Board of Trustees, Jeffrey Wadsworth, this Brit from Five Eyes, had clearly plucked J.D. Vance out of Ohio State and shuffled him right off to Yale Law School, where there's no indication that J.D. had any skills at all. But clearly they wanted to groom him at Yale, which they did for 4 years. And then he immediately was pushed into venture capital. Now, venture capital story is another element of his story, which is a little different from most of these cardboard cutouts, because we see J.D. Vance suddenly appearing at the top of all these venture capital companies, which as a younger entrepreneur, I always wanted to try to talk to, but never could get access. And suddenly JD is walking around in the boardrooms of all these venture capitalists and getting access to deals, supposedly looking at deals that he was supposed to arrange. But every indication is from the insiders in those companies is that JD was not a deal maker. He was not the kind of guy that would normally be placed in a venture capital company. And clearly he was put there for his contacts, not his skill as a venture capitalist. But now we need to talk about venture capital because it doesn't have the moniker vulture capital for nothing. And what we have now determined is that venture capital is nothing more than the outer ring feeder system for the City of London. And that all of these venture capitalists who are all such geniuses in investments, no, they're geniuses at insider trading. And so they put J.D. Vance right at the top. They poisoned him, as it were, at the top of all these companies that were supposedly doing deals. And then while they have him at the top of those companies, they're feeding him cash, huge salary, over $500,000 in one case with one venture capitalist, Naira Venture Capital, I believe the name was. And they then also coach him on what he should be investing in. There's a 17-page close typed report of all the investments he holds in all these startup companies that are all the darling companies of the Pilgrim Society. And you look at that, and that is a fact. Those are smoking gun investments. He could not possibly know anything about these companies by and large. I forget how many there are. There's something like 130 companies he's invested in. There's just no way anybody could study that unless they were just told to put money in there because, hey, wink, wink, the stock's going to go up. And that, of course, is the mode of operation for the British Pilgrim Society in the U.S. with our judges, with our politicians, with our corporate directors, corporate officers, educators, media people, healthcare people, you name it. You want a deal? I'll tell you where to invest, Douglas. Just wait. And they
As long
suck
as
them
you
in.
just give me the same advice you give Nancy Pelosi, because I'm very impressed by her ability to invest. Oh, I'm impressed by every senator's ability.
Isn't
Any
that
senator
amazing?
in the second term somehow becomes a multimillionaire. I don't
Yeah.
know how that happens, but I don't know. I'd run for office, but they don't make that much money. I made more money than that just being a consultant. So why would anybody run for office? Oh, that's because they're professional liars. And
Right.
so they found out early on that when they chose him and they plucked him, that basically he doesn't have the brains to turn against his puppeteers. And what I heard you say is very interesting. Wadsworth of Battelle, Lawrence Livermore Lab, who you did your proof of concept with, you found
Yep.
out it wasn't proof of concept, it was proof of theft.
Correct.
And this is just the way they do business. And what we're looking at here is, where is all the information that the NSA and the FBI and the DOJ and they've collected? They put it in the clouds. Where is it? It ain't in the clouds unless is Columbus in the clouds? Because that's where it is, folks. And Mike tells us all the time about the infrastructure that's going in as he witnesses driving around Columbus.
Right.
It might as well be a digital fortress where 5G, and by the way, 5G is just the beginning. They've been using 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10G for medical precision medicine for 10 years. So,
well, JP Morgan has its data center here. And I've often shown you, they have the entire operation ringed with 5G towers all around the facility. I would not go near there when they turn those on to zap people.
Now, here's how you know, because I'm an antenna guy. If all of the antennas are pointed away from the building, those aren't antennas. That's that's a military device where they can send out any vibration they want, and the vibration can cause you to die, go to sleep, scream and run away, believe that your body's on fire. What's it called? Active denial. It's a system that's been around for 25 years, and now it's so highly refined. But they didn't put it around the Capitol. Biden just put up a fence, so that there wouldn't be anybody bothering him during his rant last night. But what we're looking at here is this is the same. This is the same old thing. This is the uniparty. J.D. Vance, first off, he's changed his name 5 times. Every time somebody hurt his feelings, he changed his last name and his whole name. So when he filed to be senator, how many aliases did he put down? Because you must list all your aliases. Remember, Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro, didn't list any aliases, and yet we have his birth certificate with his real name on it, which has nothing to do with Barack Obama or the father he claims. But Kamala Harris she's not a citizen, and you see Vivaswamy and these other people who run. They aren't even American citizens. And now you see Battelle controlling the major laboratories. Now, when Michael mentioned this, I'd like for you to go into this, Michael, but 10 different major laboratories, which are really national laboratories being controlled by a Brit.
Correct.
And they are the most powerful laboratories in America. I started studying them when you mentioned this. And here's what I found out. When they say one lab, no, that one lab could have 200 components to it. And what are they doing? They are bioweapon countermeasure institutions. In other words, the pharmaceutical World War III is being run by Mr. Wadsworth out of Columbus, Ohio, through these 10 different groups, because these groups do everything. They make bombs, they make anything crazy, but then they declare that they made things like non-liquid Xerox copiers and things like this. Yeah. No. With the ultra billions they have been paid, they should have a little bit more than a small list of little trinkets that they've
By the way,
developed.
Wadsworth is retired now. He's retired, and he's now gone into philanthropy. So he's given away some of the money he made from me.
Well, that was because Battelle got into some trouble and they had lawsuits, and he was seen as somebody that was basically skimming money. Well, hello, do you think Lockheed Martin ever doesn't skim money, and L3 and the other groups that work for In-Q-Tel and the DARPA? Here, J.D. Vance is the new DARPA boy, okay? That's all he is. He changes his opinion based upon the little card they give him for his narrative and his talking points. And he changes like a chameleon. And remember, chameleons aren't that smart. They don't change to the color that they choose. They change to the color that they're around.
Can I point out, since you're talking about his resume, one of the things we noticed about all these cutouts is a similar pattern in Wikipedia. And as we've talked about many times, sometimes what Wikipedia doesn't say tells you a lot. Well, in this case, it's what it does say. And each one of these cases of these cardboard cutouts that have no brain and they do what they're told, Wikipedia fills the bottom half with their position on each key point that comes out of the polling. So if they want someone to appear Democrat, then those points lean left. If they want that person to appear Republican, they lean right. And as we now know from the Uniparty, and Vance is clearly a member of the Uniparty. I mean, if you look at, by the way, if you look at all the venture capitalists that took him under their wing, I have a list of them here. And by the way, these are all facts. He even discloses his association with these people. One is Peter Thiel. Another one is James W. Breyer. Then there's Eric Schmidt. Then Mark Andreessen. Then we've got Steve Case. A lot of people haven't heard of him, but he started it. He was the CEO still is, of AOL. Then we've got John Kasich. We've got Mark Kavami, and that's another sleeper, which I'll get back to. Then there's Battelle Memorial Institute, Jeffrey Wadsworth, and Robert Mercer. I think who else is associated with Mercer?
Well, that would be Breitbart. That would be Fox News. That would be the Brit who controls the fake right conservative media.
So Mercer's, that's curious, since that comes right out of the City of London, and those are all of the royal charters that are given out to companies in each of the market spaces as the royal blessed monopoly coming out of the City of London.
Man, I got to get me an OBE, in Order of the British Empire.
I
want to be knighted, but I'm afraid that old fat fingers would let the sword slip and cut my neck. But I promise you this, J.D. Vance, just like the list of 143 other people that Trump has paraded onto his podium to make it look like, Tim Scott and all the others who are going, I'll be your vice president. Yeah. Oh, no, you won't be. He does that for a minute to get that little constituency. And J.D. Vance, oh, no, he hasn't come out on the podium because they know whoever Trump brings out, they're going to be attacked. And as Tyler said earlier today to me, she says they chose J.D. Vance because he's the bottom of the barrel.
Well, his movie is now appearing on the first two lines under Netflix. So he is clearly being pushed by the players in the Pilgrim Society.
Well, right now, Trump needs money. Peter Thiel wasn't he part of the PayPal mafia?
Oh, yeah.
And then he was part of McAfee and the Total Information Awareness. He's total CIA. He didn't make a dime.
Palantir. He funded Palantir.
And now Mithril and others. And so when he went with J.D. Vance to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump, it wasn't about J.D. Vance and who he is, because Trump knows, because Trump never forgets when someone criticizes him. And he knows that one of his most vocal criticisms of him started in 2014 and all the way through 2016. J.D. Vance was just blasting Trump. So why would Trump even consider him as vice? Because Thiel has infinite money. It's not even Thiel's money. Let's remember this.
Well, it's the city of London. Let's remember
Yeah,
where the infinite comes from.
These are cardboard cutouts. And now the cardboard, we used to call them Silicon Valley cardboard cutouts. And we're going to have to call them Columbus, Ohio cardboard cutouts, who all are wannabe Michael McKibben's leader technology. That's what they want to be. They want to invent something that really is real, but they can't because they don't have the intelligence. Certainly J.D. Vance is one of the least intelligent people that has been considered for Trump's vice president. And Peter Thiel, it all amounts to, this is the way they do it, in the movies. They're sitting there and they're drinking whatever they're drinking, and the napkin goes from Thiel over to Trump, and it's folded, and underneath it is the amount of money he's going to give Trump for his campaign as long as J.D. Vance is his vice president. So mark my words, when it's finally found out how Trump got out of his economic mess, and it's Peter Thiel, and we see J.D. Vance up on the podium with him, which he's not going to put him up there yet. But you see, J.D. Vance would probably be good for Trump, because now let's remember that the father of the vaccines started all of this even before there was a pandemic declared by the World Health Organization. And so what we're seeing, pharmaceutical World War III, which I started predicting in late 70s, I was screaming, World War III is a pharmaceutical world war against all humanity's bloodstream. And that's what's going on, folks. We don't need bullets and bombs. Trump showed that. He can just go over and just throw around some BS, and everybody says nice things, and then they sign a new treaty. So let's remember, he could get a treaty with Putin and Ukraine in a minute, because he would first bust Zelensky for the payment he was given when he was in Belarus at the beginning of the war that he took and then ignored, and then he became greedy, and now you have him basically, he's a new State of the Union. He's a member of America, and he's a porn star, one of the most disgusting people ever on the political scene, and that's saying a lot. So what we have here is that it's all being busted. And so Trump is gone, as far as I can tell, completely nuts. He used to say crazy things. Now it's crazy to the crazy power. And who he chooses as vice president running mate, here's the deal. Every single one of them would say yes, because they know that the powers that be, and we won't say who it is, but we mentioned them earlier in this show, will make sure that Trump is assassinated. And so whoever he chooses as vice president, he knows is going to become president if he becomes president. Because they've tried everything else now, haven't they? They've tried lawfare. They've tried every single thing they can against Trump. And because he's a crazy man.
Well, let me ask you something. Mm-hmm. You obviously bring up the vaccine issue with Trump. What is it? Do you believe that he was doing that out of ignorance or out of intention?
It could go either of those ways. And other ways. It could be he finally got paid off after he woke up. But let's remember, he came into office having his wife and his self say that, hey, did you ever think that maybe vaccinations cause Asperger's? Anybody ever think about that? I mean, he literally said this out loud, which you can't say and be a politician. So he changed his mind later. And so, of course, the #1 lobby in the whole universe was to lobby Trump to become a big pharma fan. But anyway, the point is, you asked the question, and here's the deal. The deal is Trump took the combined intelligence report that said that the vulnerability of Hillary Clinton getting elected and starting World War III was if a populist came along who was a nationalist, who was a capitalist, who said no war. Well, that's all. If Trump read that, someone read that to Trump. I don't know if he reads anything, because he certainly doesn't watch the internet, or he would know that a minimum of 26 million people died directly connected to, according to the different nations that recorded those up to a certain point. They don't record it anymore. And that doesn't count the people who were permanently damaged. So when he says it's safe and effective, when he says he's the father of the vaccine, he saved lives.
Yeah, I don't know.
One of two things. Either he is so brainwashed by the Pilgrim Society and the Babylonian Radonites and his lust for money and his egotism and perhaps his megalomaniac impulses. I don't know that yet. We'll see. But either that or when he went to the hospital that time, he did get the shot and he didn't lie when he said he got the shots and the boosters, and he is now a vidiot. He's a covidiot. That's possible because we've watched him degenerate extremely in the last few years. And if we can remember, here's the deal why you know that everything that we ever said about the immunizations is true. Because I said this from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is see who was given exemptions. The entire Congress, the Senate, the Supreme Court, the executive branch, everyone in Washington, D.C., all the D.C. insiders.
All the Pilgrim Society drones.
Of course. And then the National Institute for Health and all their agencies, and then the CDCP. And nobody ever adds P, which means prevention, because they don't do any prevention. It's the Centers for Disease Control. Why? Because they create the diseases and disseminate them. Prevention's never mentioned, the last letter on it, because why? They don't prevent anything. As a matter of fact, when it hit, after they'd been talking for 2 decades about doing exactly what that pandemic did, exactly, because it's predicted, it's all in their documents. You can read it, World Health Organization.
So the other thing that this is highlighting, Douglas, is that there seems to be a changing of the guard, and now we've had Rothschild die, we've had Kissinger die, Volcker's dead, and so the next wave of Pilgrim Society grooms are having to step up. One of the key people in charge of that is James W. Breyer, the guy who funded Zuckerberg, who was the president of the National Venture Capital Association at the time of the theft of our code. His associate was, I can't remember the guy's name, who was the CEO of Incutel, the first CEO of Incutel. And so that crowd of the PayPal mafia ilk and timing, Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, and a group of those guys are now having to step up and be the leaders of this next group. And they're the ones who are now grooming younger people like JD Vance. And so but it seems like they're in too big of a hurry, because it's getting easier and easier to see the telltale signs as we look at JD's background. It all moved too fast. It was too clean. It was, he gets out of college, he gets put at the top of all these venture capital companies, which usually takes a whole career to get to that level. And then they turn around and he writes a book and it becomes a New York Times bestseller. Well, we all know New York Times is the propaganda rag for the Pilgrim Society, along with the Financial Times in London and the London Times and the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail. By the time it gets to New York Times, it's already written in England. And I think that's hard for people to understand, how the British could be running our media. And they just sit around in their offices in London, sipping their tea and writing the copy that gets pushed off in all the chyrons in the US. But we see this group of people now moving too fast. They move him through the venture capital arena and then make him a senator with no prior political experience, no life experience other than doing what he's told after he got out of college. That's too fast. I mean, it's obvious that they're pushing him along. Your point about pushing him into the vice presidency so the person can get assassinated. I mean, I see that point, but I think that's easier said than done. Don't you think?
Well, I don't know. We've had it happen multiple times. Every time the Brits don't like the president, bingo, we know what happens. So, basically, this is the best politics that the British money can buy in America. I mean, they spend a lot of money to keep their vested interests, their rat lines going, and basically the crown interests. It doesn't matter which of the Brits is the monarch. And by the way, you forgot to laud the death of the Queen. Of course, we know that that wasn't the queen for about the past 10 years. That's obvious. And when you look at this show, we used to say it's kabuki theater. Now it's theater of the absurd.
Yeah.
How can anyone
Well,
believe that an AOC should be elected or got elected? There's no elections, there's selections, and it's the Brits who control the machines.
well, the other thing that's evident from that speech last night is their various the Uniparty has its crowd that's pro Biden right now, and they have their crowd that's anti Biden right now, and they all played their part well. And we had the white ladies coming back from some they were all dressed in white on the Democratic side. It was really kind of funny. And they stood up and down and applauded. And the maddening thing is everything that they applauded in his speech was pretty much a lie. And the theater of the absurd is the right description of that. And I gotta believe that the Pilgrim Society group in London, at the City of London, were laughing their heads off at how well they have done at taking over our government.
Oh, yes. If you don't see a byline on a picture, it came from supposedly British photographers who are always right there for anything that happens in America. Why is it that the most publicized pictures come from the British press that are events happening in America? We don't get those pictures. Where do those pictures come from?
Here's a good illustration. Angela Chow supposedly backed her Lexus, not a Lexus, her Tesla into a pond in their ranch west of Austin and died. And she was married to James W. Breyer. And I tested my theory on that. I went and looked at what the Daily Mail had to show for that event, and they had exquisite coverage. Now here we are, Daily Mail in England had people on the ground who were doing this story, and I got to believe they were interviewing the groundhogs who were watching that happen, because I hate to make fun of it, but you can't be that quick in a story unless it's made up.
This huge farm, this huge ranch she had, okay,
has an airport
landing strip. Its own airport, and it's got one tiny mud puddle. And somehow she backed into it and died.
I know.
Okay, no. Here's what happens, and we've told you this before. You make a deal with China, they then will kill your relatives if you try to renege on the deal. And Breyer has so many deals with China, you can't count them.
Oh, yeah.
Eric Schmidt has so many deals. So anyone who goes to China that makes a deal with the CCP and the committee, which every agreement says the committee can renege on anything. They don't have to, in any sense of the word, live up to any contract they ever write. And they never have.
Controls every deal in China.
And in history, they never have. No treaty, no agreement, nothing have the Chinese ever had integrity with. And so why would anyone think different? So Breyer, she dies. Well, he obviously wasn't being controlled well enough by his Chinese handler.
Or maybe Mitch McConnell was doing something they didn't like.
Well, look, Mitch got beat up, thrown down the steps. Looks like he's had brain damage. Those aren't strokes. That's closed head injuries. Okay, so we see this happen all the time. Who was it? Pelosi's husband. I mean, you see people with the black eyes. Oh, I fell down the steps. No, you didn't. You don't make it into Washington District of Crime unless you are a criminal. Period. They used to just use the mainstream media. They just create a story, get rid of you if they didn't like you. You were out in a minute. But now, it's a Hollywood production there in Washington, D.C., and they promote people like J.D. Vance, telling you he's an author. Then why does he have no articles? Why has he never written anything? And why does his story is such a big fat lie? And why does he change his name all the time? And why can't you actually track down anything he's ever done? And yet, he could be Trump's vice presidential running mate? Really? They listen to this guy. Whatever he says, they put on the news. Right. And what does he say? He always says outrageous things now, ever since he became supposedly a Trump fan. He just says completely outrageous things. Matter of fact, I hear them and I go, "Oh, that's cool," and then I see who said it. No, he doesn't believe that for one tiny, tiny second. He
Yeah.
is a disturbed, emotionally disturbed person, in my opinion, with a very low IQ, who obviously has been brainwashed and is going to simply be the new Silicon Valley in Columbus, Ohio's representative in the Senate. Because why? He's on 6 major committees. Oh, the junior senator in his first year, at his first minute, got put on 6 major committees, and 3 of them are all about commerce and money and banking.
Yeah. Yeah, he obviously doesn't know anything about technology either. So they've got him right where they want him. He's their handpicked guy. I mean, he's kind of the same ilk as Kamala Harris. There isn't any talent there. There isn't any real life experience to show. So obviously they know they can put these people where they want them, and most of the time they'll get their way.
Absolutely. So is he going to be, well, as I say, mark my words, all you have to find out is if Peter Thiel gave, Trump the money he needed to get him out of the mess he's in. So, probably a couple $1 billion for his campaign. Because why? Well, we know Joe Biden's not going to make it. Oh, did you notice lately that Joe Biden's chin is just amazing? On one day it sticks out and it's perfectly round. The next day it's got a dent here that goes in 3 inches. That's his mask. Okay, so they're losing it with Joe. And Joe has, the fake Joe has become demented now. And he's just an angry maniac. And as we saw on TV last night, they overdosed him. They do that every time he's got to debate. And then he becomes an angry lunatic. Why? Because when you're a hypocrite and you're lying, you create what are called specters, phantoms. And if you could turn it into a law that controls other people, you create a demon. Well, that's what our people in DC are doing. They're creating laws, just like Pelosi said, the 10,000-page law for TPP. She says, well, we don't know what's in it, and we won't know until we pass the bill. In other words,
because it's being drafted in London and then pushed through Columbia, maybe Yale, and then put on the congressional floor.
The corporate lobbyists, lawyers write these things. No one knows what's actually in them until too late. For instance, who passed the Pandemic and All Preparedness Act, which has been ratified 6 times? Anyone who did abnegated our Constitution. It gave away our sovereignty to the World Health Organization. And right now we see that that's true. And some people are waking up to that. So when these laws are passed, we have to remember that, as you pointed out, Chandler was personally responsible for making sure that a law was passed that any senator or representative can lie on the Congress floor, even if they're under oath. They are not held to the truth.
Every once in a while, a troller will take exception to that and say, no, that's not true. Subsection B doesn't say blah, 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 blah. But they forgot to remember that we actually looked at the appeals of that particular law, and the appeals actually affirmed that it does say that they can lie. And yet they will conveniently forget that says that there. So hopefully nobody will call them on that.
Yeah. Now, Jim Jordan lately has been going after all the bad guys, right? But what happens when the House of Representatives or Senate committees recommend to the DOJ prosecution? Nothing.
Right.
So that's just theater of the absurd, to sit and listen to people say, basically, this is treason, what you're telling me. Your testimony just proved that you have committed treason. And the person will say, yeah, that's true.
There is a benefit to that. There is a benefit to that testimony. And that is, if it's presented in Congress, then we can rely on that for future litigations. So even if nobody does anything about it now, those can all be a part of the tribunals that send some of these people to the gallows.
Well, look at Mark of the Beast Zuckerberg. His testimony the other day basically said, yes, I admit that Meta and Facebook kills children, ruins their lives, causes more suicides.
He even apologized, by the way.
And then he stands up in Congress, turns around and apologizes to some fake people, and it's over. They find them, as I predicted this a long, long time ago. They're not going to change the Commerce Act. They're not going to change the fact that they're spying on us through every social media or our Gmail account or any account whatsoever. They're not going to take the back doors out of the government access to every digital platform that there is. That's just simply not going to happen. And we've seen that now. They used to argue about, does the FBI have the right to get the security code for a phone so they can open it of a criminal? And they say, no, 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 no. Oh, that is such nonsense.
Right.
So what we see here is just, Jim Jordan. Well, they're going to run him for president. Why? Because he's a social injustice hero. What has Jim Jordan ever followed through on? Nothing. Recommendations to the DOJ mean nothing. The other day, we found out that there were people on the website different websites that somebody simply called up the FBI and said they didn't like what somebody said. And then the FBI came out to their house to harass them. Do you understand that thousands of people are in jail right this moment because of things that have been intercepted in Britain? And we're telling you that Britain is in control of America. And we're telling you that Eric Schmidt gave $1.5 million during Hillary's campaign to create it. Well, there was much more than that, but she also created a template for winning the elections so that everything was rigged. And they built in a system that basically coordinated all digital functions in America into Homeland Security. And one person was in charge of it. And that person was someone who was involved with the theft of Leader Technologies inventions. There's nothing new here, folks. So what we have to do is remain in a very positive state and realize the following. There is a scientific fact, this isn't a theory, that the observer literally changes the phenomena they're observing. That's the key to this whole thing. People say, this is depressing. I'm going to throw myself off a bridge. And you say, no, only if you're ready to fly when you throw yourself off the bridge, because you have wings in your heart. And as Aristotle and all the great scholastics and all the great thinkers have always said, your thinking can cause your heart to take wings and fly into another realm so that you can perceive things for what they are. When I look at these stuff, I go, yeah, that's pure evil. But you know what? It's stupid evil. And so I laugh in the face of the devil, and the devil hates to be mocked. But here we are laughing in the face of what? This is the 5th, 6th, 8th, 10th candidate that you have vetted, and I vented, you vetted against these people because they are idiots. How could anyone ever vote for these people?
It's not even worth spending more than a couple of days on their resumes. They're so thin. And Wikipedia hasn't developed enough moxie to figure out how to hide what's going on here, because it's happening too fast. And I think that is a good sign that they're getting desperate. They've got to move these people into place before something happens. We don't know what their event is. But if we can keep identifying them and calling them out and calling the devil by his name, then we tell the devil to get behind us. And that's what we're doing here.
I forgot Candace Owens, who was the presumed next president. You know, she was slated. And why? Because she's married to one of the richest pilgrims in Britain. And then it was going to be, who was it? You know, we have seen some of the most, Meghan Markle. We were going to have a woman married to a prince of the monarchy line of Britain in the White House. Or it's going to be Kimberly Guilfoyle, who will change Gargoyle, who will change parties. Because remember, these people just change parties at the drop of a hat. They have no allegiance whatsoever. They know it's a uniparty. For instance, AOC, I mentioned her earlier. You know who solicited her and paid her? They put out an ad and they interviewed, I forget how many people, and they chose her as the one that would be the most pleasing on the screen. And what's the guy's name? The guy who's the head of the Young Turks, who then came to America and now has created the terrorist group, the Young Americans. She's the candidate of the Young American. How about the lady? I'm not going to mention names, but how about the Somali immigrant who's in our House of Representatives, who is illegal, who has committed so many crimes you can't make a list of them, and then the other people that we have as supposed representatives in our Congress representing us.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders, we don't want to forget her.
Oh, we forgot Sarah. Yes,
Yeah.
and
And
you
then we've
busted her
got
bad.
Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom, you know, now in Britain, somebody got arrested because they called him in Britain, arrested because they made fun of Gavin Newsom.
Wow.
Okay, because and I'm thinking, oh, they must have used our name, Gavin Gruesome, or you know, we have 1,000 names for him. Why? Because these people you have to make fun of them. If you take them seriously, it will make you sick, because then you know that the people who founded America, that their ideals inscribed in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution have been abnegated 100%.
Well, we know from the discovery of the Pilgrim Society strategy by Lillian Scott Troy in about 1908 that they developed a set of priorities which involved the presidency, the courts, the Congress, and the way they pass around titles to individuals, that they were going to move down this path and that they would keep doing it until they got there. Well, we have people like Sir Rudy Giuliani, Sir Henry Kissinger, and this crowd, the PayPal crowd. Some of those are going to get knighthoods. You know that's coming, and so they've been very patient in getting where they want to go and being sure that they hid that from the American people. So we all still think it's the CIA and it's the NSA and it's the Congress. And I actually heard this the other day, that this person made a summary that, well, yeah, we know the British are involved, but they're just following on behind the CIA. And I thought to myself, wow, that's exactly 180 degrees from the truth. And yet that's what these people believed. And these were some influential people. So they still don't get it. They still keep looking to the CIA, and the CIA is probably out there going, hey, it's not us. But we can't tell you who it is, called MI6 and the Pilgrim Society. They can't tell you that. So that is and it's amazing to me also that Trump's people have not picked up on all the research showing that the British ran the hoax
Maybe it's on purpose, Mike.
What?
Maybe it's on purpose. Maybe Trump is a pilgrim. I mean, come on, look at his stance on the vaccination after the State of the Union. Is he not aware of what people are saying out here about that? I don't want to get into it because, you know, YouTube and everything, but really.
Well, he could have easily defended himself with all that solid research. Arvinder Simbai
maybe he's not bright enough to read the research. I mean, we do the research. Maybe he's unable to read and digest it.
Yeah, whatever.
I know it's a sad thing, but really,
have you seen any nuggets from him?
Have you gotten a call from him talking about the Miller Act notice, the theft of social media, social networking at the executive office?
Well, no. he's in on that now because he's pushing Truth Social.
Oh yeah, he's Donald Trump's platform, Truth Social, which is anything but truth. So don't call them truths, call them posts. Is parked on stolen technology.
Yeah, it is.
What, they don't have the ability to figure this out when a little stay-at-home mom could figure it out?
Well, the second he said he's going to start Truth, we said he's going to get it going. It's going to be a honey trap. He's going to sell it for a bunch of money. And right now he's looking at selling it for a huge profit. And why? Whoever went on Truth? I mean, why is it worth anything? Those are all lies.
Well, he raised it with a SPAC, special purpose vehicle. And those investors now want their money. So he's got to turn it around and sell it for a lot of cash so he can scrape some off for himself.
Yeah.
Now, our claim is a bit of a problem for him, because if he admits that it's stolen technology, then the value drops to nothing.
Absolutely. So the question really is, okay, J.D. Vance was given money by Teal when he ran to be a senator. Okay. And magically he gets into office running against very experienced politicians. Okay. So basically Columbus, Ohio, and Ohio has gone over to the Pilgrim Society and the DARPA cardboard cutouts. And so J.D. Vance could end up being the vice presidential running mate for Trump. But here's my question, and I'll end with this. Why would they go through these 143 different people when they could have just asked Betsy Ross or you to be the vice presidential running mate?
Oh, yeah, they will never want to get rid of Trump if they thought I was going to be in charge, because you know how much research we've done? We have 10 years of research. Our files are so full of their crapola, and it's all thanks to Michael's leadership, because he's always the one that said it must be legal evidence, judicially recognized evidence. And now our files are like, what is it, 600 gigahertz? And so what would happen in my imagination, but let me, is that he would announce that I am his running mate, and people would, the news would go, who is she? Who is she? Well, there's nothing about me. They'd have to dig a lot. And in digging, they'd find out the truth. They'd find out that it's the FBI that's become the Central Police Gestapo in America. They would find out that America didn't win the Revolutionary War, and we are being still ruled by the British.
Right.
But the question is, will Trump do it? Will he step up, save America, and save himself? Because here's the thing. The Lord of Karma hasn't spoken yet.